Am I an a-hole for calling my stepmother big? Context. This takes place just after Christmas of 2022. My stepmother, 28, female, of course, stepmother, had struggled with a type of cancer before me and my dad had met her. That had caused her to gain a lot of weight. She had made it clear that she is insecure about her weight and doesn't like talking about it due to me and her kids, commonly, mostly by accident, making jokes about her weight. I, 14, male, was on a drive back from my step-grandma's house. We had been in the car for a couple of minutes, so we decided to play I Spy. My stepbrother, 7, had said he spied the biggest thing in the truck, so I impulsively said my stepmum's name for a quick laugh, but my mum didn't like the joke, fair enough. For the next couple of minutes, she doesn't say anything, that's fair. Eventually, my dad, 37, I know the age gap is kind of weird. Not really, 37 and 28 is kind of all right.
Yeah, she's almost 30.
Yeah. For the next couple of minutes, she doesn't say anything. Yeah, eventually my dad had asked her a question. This caused her to throw a fit about how no one in the family respected her and how her life had been worse because of misogynistic men had disregarded her due to her oversized body. I obviously felt bad, but I have a problem where whenever I feel sad, I shut down as a coping mechanism. So talking to her was very hard for me to do in the situation. Eventually, she had calmed down and talked to me normally about how she didn't like people making fun of her in that way. But that wasn't the problem. When she had talked about how all her life she had been put down by sexist men, it made me feel like a bad person for making these jokes. Eventually, we had gotten to her ex's house to drop off her kids, so it was me alone in Dad's truck. I started to cry. Hard as I am, I'm a very sensitive kid. Thoughts kept rushing through my head about how I was a misogynist and how I was an awful person. A couple of minutes later, my dad came back and asked me what was wrong. I was in a very bad state, so I kept saying I didn't want to talk. Talking would only make things worse, till my stepmom arrived. My dad stepped out of the truck and asked her to talk to me as I was not talking very well to him. She got in the truck and tried to talk to me, but I thought if I talked it would make things worse, so I just kept saying I didn't want to talk about it. Eventually we got home and I rushed upstairs to my room, where for the next day or two I would cry on and off. And for the past couple of weeks I've had this feeling that I'm not a good person. I would like honest feedback just to know if I was in the wrong on this. Thank you for reading if you did.
Okay.
So then OP has offered the following explanation.
Okay.
I feel like as I was the one who made the joke that made my stepmom angry in the first place, causing her to get angry. After the truck ride, I haven't felt like a good person since, and I can't look at her without thinking I'm a bad person. So I just want others' opinions so I can get some form of closure on this relatively small problem. Is there any comments? Yeah, someone said, you said something cruel and hurtful, and now you're trying to play victim. Grow the hell up. The next one has said, came here to say exact this. This poor boy is so hurt about his own behaviour. Hopefully he won't stop breathing till someone apologises to him. And then we got one that says, to be fair, at 14 we were all kid, you verified my point. You know she's sensitive about her weight, which is actually due to some seriously uncontrollable factors, and yet you go for the cheap score. Also, I suspect you haven't truly apologised. You should. You made a dick move and then tried to avoid repercussions by playing the angsty teen card. Please think about this. How would you feel about one of your friends saying that about your birth mum? And then someone said, he's so hurt because he was made to feel like he was a bad person. Unfortunately, he only got it half right. He doesn't just feel like one, he is just one. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it was just a childish remark.
Yeah, I think, it does sound like he's genuinely upset about it. And so that fact is obviously shows that he's not this horrible person. I could just tell by the way it was written that he's not a horrible person. And he's still a kid. I do, obviously he was a bit of an in the moment. Shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Rude. you know, and we should teach our kids that we shouldn't say things like that. It is rude. I do think he was an a-hole in the moment. Kids can be a-holes.
You know, he was in that moment.
Yeah, in the moment.
In the moment.
Also, we've got to watch that, you know, we don't reinforce making yourself the victim when you've hurt someone else. He should still be taught to take accountability in that moment and not be like, oh, we've got to give him sympathy because he's upset that he's hurt someone else. Because that can be dangerous, playing into that. So if someone was to sympathise too much in this moment, if he does something again in the future, he learns, oh, if I cry and make myself the victim, do you understand?
Yeah, he needs to
You
learn
have
some
got to
life
be,
lessons.
you have got to be careful with how you deal with this one. Because I agree. Don't be too harsh. He's a kid. And he obviously clearly feels bad. But that bad feeling is probably a good thing for him right now. Because it's teaching him to be a good person. Sometimes you've got to feel a little bit bad. Because now he's never going to do that now, because he's going to make him feel like a bad person. Now he's going to do everything he can to not be a bad person, because it's going to make him feel bad. So maybe this is a teaching moment. And yeah, I don't think he should be villainised for this for the rest of his life. But I like the fact that this is a teaching moment. And that going forward, he's probably going to be a great person. He's probably going to not say things like that to other people. So sometimes you do need to be called out. And it probably hurt him because he probably knew it was right, that he was in the wrong, and that person was right that he was in the wrong, and it probably hurt him to realise he had that side of himself. So he has to just get through that feeling, move past it, and then just be a good person. And people aren't going to know you as a horrible person if you change your behaviour now, at your age, you know. This is a good age to change your behaviour, because then you're not going to be known as a bad person.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not such a big deal. It's like, in the grand scheme, you know, so... Obviously, I do sympathise that he's feeling like he's a bad person. He's not a bad person. He just did a bad thing in that moment.
I think the thing that seems
because it can be really hurtful for people, like have constant. I do sympathise with the stepmom. I actually do.
Yeah.
Because it must be cruel to deal with constant weight remarks and feel like you look horrible. Your body's horrible. Everyone's taking the piss out of it. So I do. There is that. I do sympathise with her, that, you know, and so she was right to call him out in that moment and go, this isn't fair, you shouldn't speak about me like that.
Yeah, I do think
he's not an a-hole. He's not a horrible person. He just was an a-hole in that moment, I think. And it was an a-hole move
from being immature, because he's a child and not understanding the depth of how, like, but now he is. I think he is kind of understanding it in the fact that he didn't like being called a misogynist.
You're right.
And actually, I find there may be some discussion around that. I think there should be with him, because I think labelling a child a misogynist, because boys, I think, are having a hard time really at the moment with being told, you know, how everything's misogynistic and their behaviour. So that could really be troubling, like, for...
Yeah. So that's why you've got to be careful with how you deal with this sort of thing, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, he was in the wrong. He was in the wrong, but that came from immaturity rather than being a misogynist.
Yeah, this is it. And it's a teaching moment for him.
I don't think he's old enough to be...
No, definitely not a misogynist. That's over the top. And maybe she took it too far by talking about that. But I do think that it was right for her to explain, look, this really affects people on a deeper level.
Explain, like, what it is to be a misogynist. And
and not...
Going forward, growing up, that's, you know, he should avoid that kind of...
It's a teaching moment, I think, if dealt with in the right way. So, yeah, I think I don't want to say the a-hole. It is going to be in my purgatory pile, where it's like, you were a-hole in the moment, but you're not an a-hole, you're not an evil person.